Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Student Insider podcast. I am once again joined by Alex. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Luke. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Nothing too special happening on my end.
How was your week?
This week, it was quite interesting because I had some interviews to do this week, which was definitely a unique experience, I must say. And this is for the iGEM team because I think I mentioned this before, but I'm leading iGEM for KCL this year, which I'm really excited to be doing. But we can maybe talk about that a bit later. And Alex, how about your week?
Yeah, I was doing good, man. Yeah, pretty solid. Thinking a lot about my approach to different stuff. I started to read a bit more as well recently. That I'm trying to get. It's a habit that I'm trying to build. But overall doing pretty good. Still making content. Still going to class. Still all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
it's good to hear you're going to classes still. That's quite important, and you kind of need to do that. But have you been like any good book recommendations? Like if you've said you've been reading a bit more, have you got anything like that you read that you was like, oh wow, that's really interesting?
Yeah, I started reading this book by Dale Carnegie. It's like How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a pretty interesting book. It's about like how to like just network more effectively and like when you meet new people and all that kind of stuff. It's something I'm still reading. It's like they show it from both from like a business perspective in terms of like how just like showing an interest in other people can like show value to them person and also provide value to you because you're showing that interest in another person. There's so many principles in the book. I think it's really interesting, and especially if some people might find it more difficult to like network with people or like meet new people. I think it's really interesting book. I've really taken a lot of things away from it. Like even when reading, I'm always like got a pencil out, underlining things that I'm like, oh, that is so cool. I can use that kind of thing. It's a really interesting book. It's like it's the first book that like brought this whole self-help industry became a thing because the book was released in like in the 1920s, 1930s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's like a really old book then.
Yeah. It's been like revised many times. But yeah, really good book. We can leave a link in the show notes if you want to check out that book.
Awesome. Have you managed to transfer anything from that book to actual networking, or have you yet to do that maybe because of lockdown? Or
I'm trying to apply things that I'm learning in terms of like how I'm like when meeting people like through different platforms online and stuff like that. But at the moment I've just still been reading it. I've not applied a lot of it yet, but I'm aiming to just like slowly just make it more subconscious in like in with the principles that I'm sharing in the book. But yeah.
Awesome. Sounds like some good stuff. So anyway, before we jump into the episode, Alex, question of the week.
Yeah,
this is my question, isn't it,
this week? Okay, I've got my question here. Okay, that's good.
I'm kind of scared.
So I was thinking about like philosophy stuff as I do, and I was thinking, okay, I was like looking online and I found out this question. So here's what I come up with. Here it is. If you could teach everyone in the world one concept, what concept would you teach and what would have the biggest positive impact on humanity?
A concept. That's interesting. Is this like, because instantly when I think concept, I think of like something scientific, like the foundations of some kind of like biological process. Is that the kind of concept you're getting at, or
it's really up to your interpretation, but it could be any kind of concept. I thought you would take a science perspective on it, knowing you. So yeah.
That's instantly. I've always like this is what I was thinking about initially. I think that off the top of my head, the first thing that came to my mind is like just climate change, just something about like making everyone aware about climate change. And I think everyone is, but I do think that it needs to be reaching more people, and I need more people to care. So I think if people understand the concept and the foundations of what climate change is, people might start to make a bit of a difference to the way that they, just daily activities like recycling, etc., that kind of thing, saving energy, just to help with that kind of situation. So that's what I'd initially jumped to, but I think after maybe some more thought, I might have been swayed towards something else that's maybe a bit more important to humanity rather than like the whole climate in particular, because if you think about climate change, it doesn't just benefit us, it'd benefit like every single organism on the planet if we were to reduce like carbon emissions, etc. But yeah, I don't know if you take a more like humanitarian kind of approach to it and teach them some kind of like self-care kind of thing to help with stress in big cities, or maybe something like that. But then again, that doesn't apply to everyone. So I'd say that's a really weird and thing that I have to think about more. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. So I hope I answered that okay. Sorry. So that was a deep question. But yeah, anyway, so now that's finished. So this episode is going to be a bit different. So me and Alex were doing some brainstorming, and we thought that this time around we'd do a kind of, instead of doing a like an informative podcast episode, we'd do one that was a bit more of a debate. And we thought for this time,
so we thought like
go with the title, Alex,
it'd be more like take you along a journey and take us along a journey and like talk about this topic of like, do we spend too much time on technology? I know it's a bit ironic because we are recording this through technology, but so yeah, we're trying to just go through this. It's something that's been on my mind. I know, Luke, you've had like experiences with something to do relating to this as well with your laptop, and yeah. So let's just like dive into that, and I think this is going to make a really interesting episode.
I think to begin with, I think the best starting place would be is just to evaluate maybe our own experience with technology, and I think this question is really important now, amongst all times, just because of sort of how dependent I think that as a student I've become, and it's probably the same for you, as on technology in order to complete like university classes. So I'd just say, roughly, how many hours do you think that you're spending in front of a screen or using some form of technology? Because I guess in that sense, listening to music could also be technology if you count it. But you know, how many hours would you?
Would you
a
lot
predict?
of hours, that's for sure. I'm not sure if I could put a number on it, but more hours in the day than I would like to, probably. Like I've decreased my screen time a lot over the last couple of months, and I'm happy about that. On my phone, like I remember seeing a point where it was like 4 or 5 hours, and now it's decreased to like 1 to 2 hours, which is pretty good, and I'm happy with that. But then that screen time might just be going onto my computer, so it's kind of like, it's difficult now because like we're talking about, is before, like when we're on campus, we go to class, we are going somewhere, we're not on technology unless you're taking notes on your computer, but it's kind of like a mix of both when you're doing that. Like, but when you came home from having lessons or whatever, then you might go on technology or do whatever you want to do. But now it's like, okay, lessons are on the computer, and I'm doing my like assignments there on the computer, studying basically on the computer, and it's like all these kind of things, and it's just more effective in some way. But I want to see if we can find a way where we could optimize not spending so much time that would have a bigger benefit for us. Because like I was reading this study, and it was like there's a correlation between more time spent on technology and screens with depression. It's not saying that time on technology causes depression, but it's saying there's a correlation between them two. So so for things such as finding that balance between analog systems and digital systems, that's something that I've tried to implement. Like I have my bullet journal where I like plan quite a few of my tasks. Like I do like weekly planning in there, and that is like a system that I've started to now bring something that's a bit analog. I've got a habit tracker in here. I started to have like a sleep tracker as well to see how many like hours a week, hours a day I'm sleeping and what time, just so I can like evaluate it and see, okay, this is how many hours I've slept, what time. Like if I have a goal, if I want to wake up at a certain time every day, say like 7 a.m. or something like that, I can see, okay, this is what I've actually been doing. I can compare that to what my goals are. And I have this process right now, which is I use note-taking systems such as Notion, which is the reason I still do it and won't go to like paper notes. One, like it's bad for the environment to just like take everything on paper notes in one sense, right? Mm-hmm. And then also it's so easy to find something digitally in a note. Because if I had this stack of notes, right, it would be like so hard to find something. Like if I like, and I can easily grab a blog post from the internet and put it on a note-taking tool, right? Like I can use a clipper, so there's something like a Notion clipper where I can grab a whole blog post, put it into a page in Notion, and that can just like transfer the whole thing instead of me having to like print something out and then put it here and then organize it in the physical system. It makes things so much more difficult if I did that. And I've been using Notion for like coming up to 2 years now. And I have like, I was looking the other day when I like saved my, like I exported my whole of Notion to save it, to just like have a backup just in case something happens. And I have over around 20,000 pages in Notion, which is insane. Yeah.
Wow. That is a lot of
So
pages.
it's like all the things that resonate with me, all the things I want to learn, I'm pulling from the internet where I find it, blog posts, podcasts, YouTube videos, even films and stuff that I see. I'm pulling from that and put it into my tool. Like when I come across a film that I want to watch, put it in Notion. When I see a blog post I want to read, put it in Notion. When I watch a YouTube video, like, oh, that's so cool, put it in Notion. Like put it in Notion. It's just a hub for everything. And I feel like in the long term, it's going to be even more effective. Like when it comes to things such as when I was like doing some research for this episode or doing research for a YouTube video, I could easily search the things that I already have researched around the topic, and there's the answer. There's research already done for that.
Yeah, so you picked up on some really good points there. Like quite a lot of really good stuff, and I think that I agree with you in the fact that Notion and other online note-taking tools are superior to taking notes on pen and paper, just because of the environmental effects, definitely, but also just in terms of organizing as well. I mean, I did a lot of paper notes for my A levels, and I didn't think it was too hard to organize in a massive, like, you know, those massive like clip thing, what's they called, the folder things with the clips,
binders, yeah.
Binders, that's the one. So yeah, just shows you how long I haven't used them. But I found that quite useful. But the only thing is that I had so much paper from so many classes that these folders were just impossible to carry around for me, and it was so hard, like carrying in all this work every day. So on top of textbooks as well, it was a lot. I think I probably built a lot of muscle just from lugging around that massive like rucksack of notes every day. So I think, yeah, in that sense, that Notion is superior. So then in that case, it would assume that we have, as a student and as maybe someone who needs and requires you to take notes often, in that sense, has a more of a dependence on technology than someone who doesn't need to take as many notes. So I think that's sort of a very interesting way of looking at this debate, in that, you know, we do spend a lot of time on technology, but do we need it? And you know, you mentioned before about the fact that now even online classes, because everything is online, you know, we have to spend day in and day out on our computers now in order to keep up. And I think that I've spoken to some of the staff at my uni about this, and I think that there is a really big problem in that there's no break for students from screens now. And I think it's something that they've really overlooked. I don't have a solution for it at the top of my head, but I do think that something does need to be done, considering the mental health of students as well. Because, you know, you mentioned that more screen time is linked to depression, or I think it was the other way around. It was depression is linked to more screen time.
I think it was a correlation if higher screen time is correlated with a higher chance of depression, I think.
Yeah, so then in that case, that supports this perfectly, and then that more screen time is not going to be good for students' mental health. And another interesting thing that I found out is that at King's, the staff do get mental health days, where they are like obliged to just say, I'm not coming and not doing work today, and there's no like repercussions of that. But as a student, you can't just, you know, if you organize well, you can take a day off, but you know, you're going to have to do that work later on anyway. So I think it's a really big issue at the minute. But yeah, it's an interesting take that you've got on that.
It's like, I was thinking, right, like my laptop, was it back in October or something? It was just like, it had this like update or something, and it wasn't working all day, so it was taking forever to update. And I had this like, I didn't know what to do. Like I was like, I become so reliant on using my computer. I was like, what do I do today? Like I just didn't know what to do. I think I ended up just like, you know, reading or something like that. I can't even remember, but I know that like it's just, I want to kind of find a solution to that, to make you feel like I don't want to be on the reliant of these devices. Like I don't know if you remember a couple of maybe weeks or months ago, Google stopped working for like a couple of hours or something, and everyone took to Twitter and was like, oh, Google is down, YouTube is down. I was like, I couldn't see my calendar because Google was down, and I was like, that made me think more about this topic. Was like, I'm reliant on these devices.
Yeah, the fact that everyone like stormed onto Twitter to be like, this needs to be fixed like now, it just shows that like sense of urgency. As soon as that the screens are taken away from you, it's like, oh god, and then you start to panic because you just have such a reliance on them to get your work done and in the end just be successful, I guess. But what was it? Did you say it was something that your computer or something broke when you took time away from the screens, when you were having that crisis? Or
it was just my laptop was taking forever to update, and it was just taking all day, and it just that's when it made me think about, okay, why is this happening? Why am I feeling like this? Probably because I've been spending too much time on these devices. And that was like the start of me trying to think, okay, how can I decrease my screen time? How can I become, and I'm thinking in this process, I think I'm still early on because I still spend too many hours. I spend more hours than I want on my screens. And it's like trying to find that balance. Okay, I want to be successful and do these things, but then also I don't want to spend so much time on my screen. So it's trying to find like, what do I do? And yeah, I've started to spend so much less time on my phone, and I'm happy about that. Like, and I made a whole video about like how to prevent your smartphone from ruining your life. And I've talked about the two biggest things is if you're feeling overwhelmed or something like that, just try go off social media. Like go off it for a week, go off it for a month. You'll be amazed how much you don't actually need it. You'll be amazed how much the feeling you think and how much more productive you can be because you won't have this distraction around you. I think I will probably do social media detoxes every year for like once or twice every year. Like I've done them a couple of times now. I've done a month back in July, I think, or June for about 6 months ago for 1 month. And yeah, I think I'm probably going to do it like for a month, maybe twice a year or something. And now I've just been even more intentional with my approach and how I'm using platforms like Instagram and stuff like that. Like once I finish posting, I either delete it off my phone or just like move it to the app library part of my phone, like on the iPhone. So like I'm not spending as much time on my platform. But if I catch myself spending too much time on that platform, okay, I'm going to delete it off my phone. Like if I just find myself, I'm just going on my phone and scrolling, I'm like, wait a minute, is this what I want to do right now? Is this how I want to be spending my time? It's just having that, trying to build that intentionality mindset. I think that can be so impactful for us.
Yeah, no, it's the thing is as well is that you said that you're taking these social media detoxes in order to be more productive, but did you find yourself straying towards another screen at any point throughout those detoxes, just like naturally, because you know, like you might have done more work, which in essence is still screen time. It might not be the same kind of screen time as in it's wasted time because it's just like, you know, mindlessly looking at on social media, etc. So yeah, how did you experience anything like that?
Trying to think back, I'm assuming I probably did spend more time on my computer, and that probably is the case. I can't remember exactly, but I'm assuming that's probably what it was. Or maybe I spent more time. I think I spent more time interacting with other people, either online or offline, just because social media is this like fake version of speaking to people in a way, depending on how you're doing it. Like if you get a post, if you've got a notification that someone's posted, that's not really you interacting with someone. That is just like the algorithm being, hi, come over onto my platform. Because as we know, the longer we spend on these social media platforms, the more money they make because the more ads they run. Like that's the reality of how it works. And like there's this amazing documentary called The Social Dilemma. I recommend that you watch it. It's really interesting. It really shows into the behind the scenes of how these platforms like Google and Instagram and YouTube and all these things work. Like it links to this thing called the Internet of Behaviors, and I've done like a whole project on this at university in my like information systems class. And there's information of systems, Internet of Things devices, so such as your phone, and these can alter your behavior through their algorithms and collecting like the cookies that see what you've done before, and it can change your behavior. And the whole thing this documentary is looking at is like the dark side of social media. It's looking at if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And there's this guy, Tristan Harris. He's like one of the main people that is interviewed in this, and he's like set up a non-profit about all this kind of stuff. And it's really interesting. I would definitely recommend that you give it a watch. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, no, that sounds really, really fascinating. I think I've seen that on Netflix, but I haven't necessarily clicked on it. But yeah, you mentioned that if it's free, then you become the product, and I think that's really interesting. What is that? Was that from the show? Or is that just something that you picked up yourself?
No, that's from the documentary. They say that, and I think it's like a really big thing that stands out because we don't really understand the behind the scenes of these platforms as consumers unless we've looked into it. And I think like the purpose of this documentary and talking about topics like this is to show people the reality of how these platforms that we're using subconsciously, just because it's become a habit in our lives, how it actually impacts us, and how like I think like being more intentional with things like this can really lead to a happier life. And I think just thinking about these kind of things, yeah, I just think it can be really beneficial. Like I know back on like the feeling of when like the laptop breaking, like your laptop broke recently, right? Like
Yeah.
what kind of like feeling did that bring to you when that happened?
So this happened a couple of weeks ago, and luckily I got my laptop back to me quite quickly. It only took a week, and Microsoft were really supportive throughout the whole thing. So but on the weekend it happened. So it happened on a Friday. And as soon as it like started to malfunction, I just sort of like thought like, yo, this is really bad, you know. First of all, I was thinking in terms of the money, because I knew that my warranty had ended, and that meant that, you know, I'm going to have to buy a new laptop, which as a student isn't really the most ideal thing. And the worst part of it is that with this laptop, I did dish out to get this laptop because I thought it would be beneficial for my studies, because it's like a 2-in-1 tablet. I thought it'd be great for note taking, etc. So that was the first thing that ran through my mind, is in terms of finance. But then after that, I just thought, because my course at the moment is quite intense, and that's mainly because of what I decided to do myself, and knowing that intensity and what was to come, in terms of I had coursework deadlines and other things coming up too. This podcast is also on my mind, you know, wanted to get this started again. Yeah, it was a lot, and I just felt like I was kind of letting people down as well in the fact that my laptop broke because of iGEM and also the podcast. So, you know, there was a lot of guilt in that sense too. And then yeah, the thing that the last thought that really got to me was I'm going to be so behind, and I was sort of in the process of thinking, you know, it's only two days that for the weekend that I was feeling bad, but it's going to be, you know, it could be weeks of me missing out on work that I need to do because I didn't have another laptop that I could use. So it was a really stressful weekend for me, and it did make me quite upset. I did feel really down, and it was probably the worst I've felt in a long time, probably since last year, since I had that kind of like that burnout that I had from working too hard. So yeah, it was a really bad weekend for me. But as soon as the Monday came and I knew that my laptop was going to be fixed for free, and they'd send me a new one, and it sort of took the pressure off me a lot. But yeah, no, I think the way that I reacted on the weekend really did highlight to me how much time and how much dependence I had on my laptop, because it was everything that I was doing was my laptop. It wasn't just the social stuff, it was like the work and everything as well, because I used my laptop to call my friends, and that was my way of keeping in contact with people, and my way of sort of, because before I had jiu-jitsu and judo, which would be my social time, and now I had to sort of find a new thing to do, which was just to call friends and make sure that I'm engaging with people socially outside my family, because, you know, it does get a bit tiresome talking to the same people all the time. But yeah, no, it really did highlight to me just how much of a dependence I had on my laptop. And then sort of since then, I've really had like a different outlook on work and the way that I approach uni. I think that my laptop breaking was kind of like a cycle, a really vicious cycle, like was like really self-detrimental, like breaking, because I just sort of realized like this day in and day out, my laptop is my life. And I think that the situation has a lot to do with that too, because before it was fine, like I wasn't spending too much time on my laptop, but since lockdown it's been very, very consistent for me. So
I think so. It was kind of like a learning opportunity for you. Like it gave you like was it like a sense of realization?
yeah, no, I think obviously I haven't lost anything financially, and I've managed to catch up on the work that I did miss in that week, that I missed not having a laptop. But I also think that it was quite a blessing for me in a sense that because my laptop wasn't there, and when it was taken away from me forcefully, it's that's like the change and that sort of push that you need to realize that there's something wrong. You know, it's the same as like you were saying, like deleting the apps. But, you know, deleting the app in the first place is very difficult once you've sort of built them foundations of that like necessity to be using that software, you know. So I think that in that sense, it was quite a beneficial thing to happen to me, even though it sounds really stupid, because, you know, if a laptop breaking you know, like 90% of the time, never really a good thing. So
I think it's really interesting. And like something that I was thinking about recently, and was trying something like very different. Like, so I done my social media detoxes before, as I mentioned, and what I've kind of done since doing these kind of things is try and but not become as reliant on these platforms. Because, like, you know, you said that feeling of when something breaks and you're like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Like, if like, you're like, how am I going to go to class? How am I going to my friends? How am I going to do all these things? It's like, it's like you're tied to it, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be tied to these devices. I want to be we want to be our own person and use these things that help us. We don't want to be reliant on them. And like, I've tried to become less reliant on all these different platforms and try like just declutter it and become just use a less amount of platforms. So like, I used to use Snapchat to text my friends, and I've slowly integrated that over time to using things like WhatsApp and normal messages, because I just feel like I want to have that difference between notifications and messages from someone actually sending me a message and having a platform which is content. Because like Snapchat, it's like you're watching the stories there's news. If you scroll down, it's different kind of platform. So like, I haven't used Snapchat in like over a month, and I have no intention of going back on it. And it's just trying to find, been a bit difficult, because like, okay, a lot of conversations were on Snapchat. Like, when I was on my social media detox, I missed opportunities to hang out with friends because I didn't see the message. You know what? You live and learn kind of thing. And like, that's how I look at a lot of things. It's a learning opportunity. It's like, something goes wrong. Okay, what can I learn and carry on and just like live a better life, help people along the way, document my journey, that kind of thing. Like, something I'm thinking of trying is deleting 90% or disabling 90% of apps on my phone. And
wow,
yeah,
how are you going to pick between, you know, the ones that you've got?
Yeah, I was doing the maths the other day and like seeing how many apps I have, and there's like, maybe it came down to maybe like having 11 apps or something like that. I can't remember, but it's like, okay, phone call, that's one. Just like having your phone, like where you can like, you know, click the green button and like call someone. Like text message, WhatsApp, I don't know, an app to edit photos or something like that. Like, really just get rid of all the things, disable all the things in settings which I don't actually need. Like, there's a different alternative, or I actually just don't need it. And I think that's going to be an interesting experiment, and like something that I've taken from discovering these people online that do things like this, like Nathaniel Drew, Matt Diavella. They do really awesome self-improvement experiments, and I've done some myself. And that's why I think the power of social media is so awesome, because you can see these other people that are sharing their stories and sharing what they have done, and you can learn from it and implement it in your own life. And that's why I think it's so impactful, of like what we're doing here. We're talking about this topic. I think like that's what I see with everything. It's like, okay, we can change someone else's life. We can help them in a way. And I feel like even if we're talking about things that have already been talked about, maybe that person hasn't heard it from the other person. And there's this message. It's there's no unique messages. There's only unique messengers, which is like how we say something will be different to how someone else says it, because it's from a different person. And like the way someone interprets a quote, how we interpret a quote might be different to someone else. And that's why I feel like things like this is so impactful. And
yeah, no, I definitely agree. This is one of the reasons that I love doing this podcast so much, because I feel like it's a good opportunity for us to kind of express ourselves, but in the same time, help other people. And that, yeah, this is also a really good reason to go and check out Alex's YouTube channel, because it has got some really good content on there. You know, I'm an avid watcher, so I think you guys should be too. But also, I would also recommend, I guess the takeaway message for me is to just grab a massive sledgehammer and just whack it into the top of your laptop, and then just say you dropped it to whatever company you got it from, and hopefully they give you a refund.
Just for clarification, Luke is joking. Do not try and claim insurance by breaking your computer.
Yeah, obviously I'm kidding. But you know, I would definitely recommend, like, after listening to this, I know it's going to be difficult, because I there's no way that if I listen to this and listen to myself saying this, I'd be like, there's no way I'm going to just like turn off my laptop for a couple of days. I've got work to do. Like, don't be stupid, but really do consider it. It is it did really change my perspective, and it sort of woke me out of a cycle. And I think that there's a lot of people that are probably in the same position, especially seeing as students right, everyone is doing online courses right now, and I think there's a lot of people that are probably in the same situation but don't realize it, because of just having to adapt to lockdown. And in that process of trying to adapt, you can be self-detrimental, and it's a thing that's happened so quickly. And I don't think people have realized that how detrimental being online and on screens all the time actually is, especially for mental health. You've said before, it links to depression if you have more screen time. So yeah, and there's also, I think that people will definitely struggle to sort of take away from screens, because I sometimes I look through LinkedIn, and I hear stories of people that these really profound, like really like high up in their company kind of workers, the people that dedicate their whole lives to just working, and they write messages, and they just warn people and say, like they get so caught up in their work, and I guess you could say the screens at the same time, that they kind of forget about that they have a family and they have friends. And I think there was this really sort of heart melting, I guess you could put it, story that I saw, where the moment, the turning point for someone was that their son had drew a picture of their family. He was like, this is like like the really crappy looking drawings that the kids write, and he wasn't in it. And that's, I think that was like the moment where he realized, like, wow, like my son hasn't drawn me in the family photo. It must have been difficult. And I think that's like the turning point for him. And like in a similar contrast, it was the turning point for me, as in my laptop was like exploding. That was the thing for me. So I think there's a lot to be done in terms of helping people deal with their work and having that good balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I did mention this before, but how these difference between human and non-human notifications link on these platforms. These platforms have started to take action to get rid of some of the detrimental effects that technology can have, and spending time on their screens. Like, I know in Instagram, you probably heard a while ago, they started to get rid of the showing how many likes on photos. So
Instagram have started doing that.
It's happened in Australia, I believe, so far. Maybe some other places, but I know in Australia, you can't see how many likes are on your photo. You can go into analytics and then find it after, but in general, when you're looking at the photos, there's no likes, meaning we won't be comparing ourselves to other people. And a big negative impact of social media is people comparing each other to other people, and they'll be like, oh, this person has this amount of followers or this amount of likes. It might make them feel, I don't know, feel like they're not worthy or something like that because of the number like that. But in reality, the number is nothing. It's just a number on the screen. And that's a mindset I got into a while ago. It's just I don't care about the numbers. Just do what you want to do. And I've been doing this photography challenge thing for the last couple of weeks that I'm doing for 30 days. And I've been looking at the numbers of the likes. Maybe I looked at it when I was just checking the photos, but I don't care about the number of likes. I was I was checking a video I posted. Oh, I got 500 views on IGTV. I was like, oh, sweet. But I don't care if it's got more or less views than someone else. It's just something that I've created. I want to put out there. It's I think that mindset, if you can get into that mindset, I think it could be so impactful for all of us. And it's just kind of getting rid of that toxicity, if that's the word, of social media. And having optimizing the good parts and getting rid of the detrimental negative parts.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned about what Australia were doing with the like system, I think that is definitely a step in the right direction, because there's a really interesting video by Prince EA that I watched a while ago and watched again recently in light of this episode. And he basically says that social media should be called anti-social media, just because even though it puts you in contact, it does take you away from the real human connections that you can build with people. And I think a large part of that is to do with the likes and people just having oh, I didn't get enough likes on this photo. What can I do next time to make it better? And I think it really does start to become toxic, not to yourself, but to other people as well. Because you'll start comparing yourself to others, and that can start bringing out some really nasty and envious, jealousy kind of personalities in yourself. And I think that just from what I see on my social media when I go through, I do see a lot of people that seem just desperate for likes and some kind of attention from social media, and I think that's really destructive behavior. And I think that the best way to go about it is, like you said, just post what you want to post something that's meaningful, post something that you think it will, others will like to see, like you out having fun. Your friends would probably like to see that because they care about you. And yeah, again, like in the sense of content creation, I think it is definitely not about the numbers, and it is definitely about the quality and what you can provide to people. And then secondly, it's a big part of it is what it will do for yourself, because you don't want to be making content just because it will get you likes and views. If you hate it, it will just, it's not what you started doing content creation for. You started creating content because you enjoyed it, and now you're just creating content because that's what people want to see. And if it's not what you want to do, you see that in a lot of different people on YouTube, especially, where they'll start doing something and then they'll just out of nowhere they'll make a video like, this is just not what I want to do, and you don't see that. I don't know if you can think of any examples of people that that have just been like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm not enjoying it. And I think a lot of that is to do with just not wanting to disappoint the crowd that you've built up as well.
I feel like you said, you don't want to be feeding the algorithm, because if you start feeding the algorithm with what people want to see, then you're going even further away from what you want to do, and that will just lead to even more detriment and even worse, more in the wrong direction. But I think with stuff like putting out yourself online and doing stuff like that, people people often say, find your niche, find what topic you want to talk about. And I love what Gary Vee says, which is you are your niche. People are watching you. It's who you are. You can talk about one thing, talk about another, whatever. It's don't tie yourself down to this certain topic. And if you do things like that, that's going to it's going to tie you in this corner that you don't want to be in if you want to do stuff like putting content out online. And I feel just if you do what you want to do, the people will come. There will be someone out there that likes what you're doing. There's a is it a book or something like that, or a concept? It's called 1,000 True Fans. If you can get 1,000 people who like your stuff and watch you'll be fine. You can, if you want to make a living doing something like this, it is easy. All you need to do is 1,000 true fans. It's like this concept of, okay, if somebody wants to make £1 million or $1 million, all you need to do is sell a certain product to a certain amount of people for a certain amount of money. If you want to make £1 million, you can sell a £1 product to 1 million people.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing that I wanted to bring up that is quite interesting, I think that I could do with is, and I think this would solve the issue that we mentioned earlier about students not having the time away from screens, is having access to kind of two different phones or two different screens. So you have one that you do work on and one that you use for your social time and other things. And I think that is definitely a good way to go about it. Because I think for me, especially with WhatsApp, because I use my WhatsApp to communicate with everyone that I know on iGEM. And at the same time, I also use WhatsApp to message friends. So I end up, if I want to go on WhatsApp to quickly send to just have some social time and message friends, I end up getting caught up in iGEM things, which is in a way it's kind of work, but it's also social time for me. So it's a bit of a weird situation, but I can imagine that, having group chats of work related things or things that would require you to do something that's not necessarily leisurable is kind of a problem for me. And I have been thinking about maybe if I do get a separate phone where I can read emails and stuff and just have my phone for my social time. And I think that's definitely a good way to go about it initially. I don't know if you know anyone that's sort of had that approach to work and having a different phone.
I haven't heard about having a different phone or anything like that. But I feel if something I've been thinking about is maybe not having any email on my phone and just having it on my computer. So it's creating that separation, like you say. And also something I've been thinking about recently is that like you said, you have these WhatsApp groups and for iGEM stuff, and then you also have texting friends and stuff like that. And I feel recently I've been started to gravitate towards, okay, maybe I actually want to just call my friends more than texting them, because that is more of real conversation. Because like I think like there's three levels. There's text message, there's phone call, and there's video call. And I think like video call has the most value, and then text message have the least value. Because speaking to someone on the phone, I think that is really good as well. But if you can go on to like video call, you can actually see them. Because like at the moment, because of lockdown and all that, we can't actually meet in person. Video call is our best alternative, and then phone call, and then text message. And I feel like, yeah, that's my approach to it in terms of how I'm thinking forward in terms of like contacting friends and stuff like that. And yeah.
Do you know what could be an interesting approach is that maybe you should set yourself like a goal. I'm only going to send 15 messages today, and then that way you'll spend less time on social media, but then you'll also be more inclined to do a video call with people in that sense. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea that I just had that could work.
It could be like, that will really make you think in terms of, okay, I want these 15 messages to provide me and the other person the most value. Because it'd be like, say you're scheduling a call with someone, that'll take priority over just, I don't know, sending a meme to some person that you hardly know on Instagram.
Yeah.
that and I remember hearing about this idea of a social media platform where you can only post one thing a day. And because you can only post one thing a day, there's a limit for everybody that's putting stuff out there. That will really make you think, okay, I want this to be the best thing it can. I want it to provide the most value that you can. Like that, if you only send 15 messages a day or however often, or whatever limit you create for yourself, that rule that you create yourself, linking back to this whole thing of, okay, let me set up rules or experiments for myself to try and see the benefits that provides me. I think that'll be really interesting. Yeah, I think I might give that a go.
Yeah, awesome. Like, I think that maybe if there's anyone out there that's listening, Alex, you have frozen. I don't know if you can still hear me.
All good.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I think my camera died. So.
Oh, your camera. That's fine. Oh, yeah, we're back to the old camera now. some of the beautiful things about Zoom. But yeah, no, I completely forgot what I was saying. Now the camera's kind of distracted me.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No, it's fine. But yeah, no, if anyone is out there is listening and you want to try this, maybe that's a new idea, and maybe let us know. You can always get in contact with us with email or social media, which is always in the show notes. But yeah, I don't know if there's I think this topic, it kind of doesn't really have a solution, and I think that your screen time really depends on what career you go into, and I think that should be a consideration that you take into account when you do start looking for jobs. And that kind of thing, is how much free time am I going to have and how much screen time am I going to have? But you know, some people like that intensity, and I can say from doing interviews that there are some very work intense people out there, even more so than myself. And you know, I'm a person that really thinks that I'm quite a hardworking student. Not to be like too cocky. But you know, in comparison to some of the other people I've seen on my calls, I'm like, wow, like I thought that I was working like to my absolute fullest in terms of my maintaining my mental health, and there's other people out there that are just doing absolutely fantastic and astounding things, and it's maybe I don't really understand their situation well enough, or maybe my own situation well enough, but yeah, it is really fascinating to see that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It makes you think like how what you do and what other people do can be really different, and like everyone has their own perspective on things in life in general, and like how and people's work ethic and like what they want to prioritize. Like we all have a lot of things that we like say, like there's a different, say it's like a staircase, and you have a staircase, and the higher up you go, the top one is like your top priority, and then like all the way down is like your lowest priority, and then everyone has these different balances of what they care about the most, and that's really makes you think like what do we want, what things do we want, and we can just like prioritize whatever, you know, like what are the things we want in our life. And I think
no, definitely. I don't know, I'm just trying to think, because you know we've really brought up some really good points about screens and maybe some methods about screen time, but I don't know if there's there might be a short-term solution, but I don't think that the way that the workplace is now and the way that we've had to adapt to COVID-19 so quickly, I don't think that there's going to be a long-term solution to this kind of work.
I think, like you said, it depends what career you go into. So if you choose a career in something which has something that you don't need to be on screens, and you don't want to spend as much time on screens, there's your solution. Like I know for me, what I'm thinking right now is, okay, maybe I want to go into something more related to film. but not just editing. It's going to be like filming, like coming up with ideas, concepts, storyboarding, going out and on locations and filming stuff. So that's creating that separation. And because I won't be in front of a screen in an office all the time. And in the back of my mind, that's been like the reasoning behind that is I enjoy it. There's different kinds of work that's going into that, and it won't just be one place all the time. And that's, as a byproduct of that, that's going to be spending less time on screens. And yeah, that's been part of my thought process. In one, I'm thinking I want to go down this kind of route of being a filmmaker because it's got so many aspects of it. I don't know if I want to like go to a more specific part and do something very specific in filmmaking, or if I want to do more of a broad kind of role. I guess that my interest will develop over time, and I'll figure that kind of stuff out. But yeah,
it's definitely, I think in the sort of long term, then I think maybe looking at your career and looking at the kind of hours and the kind of work that you'll be doing. And I mean, some people do love to be in front of screens, and I do think that we should let people do that, but I do think that it's also like you need to really think about how much time you do spend in front of them. In the long term, definitely, because think of someone who, I don't know, someone who streams something, they're going to be looking at a screen for hours on end every day. And, you know, like people do that, and some people can handle it. So it's weird that, you know, that we're putting an emphasis on sort of the importance of avoiding screens, but there's some people's the careers that rely on it. So I think it does really is sort of a career specific thing. So I think you do need to just sort of evaluate within yourself, you know, am I able to, and do I like spending this much time on screens? And, you know, considering the health benefits of staying away from screens. I mean, you know, like screens have only come around since maybe like the early or the late 1900s, like 1980s was the first computer, I think. And I mean, at the time, I mean, no one had a computer, you know, or most people didn't even have a television or TV. So yeah, like we're not adapted to looking at screens all the time. So there obviously is a health benefit to and doing the natural thing, which is to just experience and enjoy the world, I guess.
I really agree with that. And like, I think there is solutions that we can implement to spend less time on screens, like we've been saying. Like we said, like notifications, delete apps that don't provide you any value. Like something I recently done is like, don't use my phone as an alarm clock. Like I bought like a normal alarm clock off Amazon. That means my phone's not in my room when I go to sleep. It means like I won't check it in the morning. And like when I'm in my majority of the time, when I'm like working or doing something in my room, I just won't have my phone in here because that distraction won't be there. And that is correlated with a decrease in screen time on my phone. And
no, I mean, I must say I do admire your techniques and everything that you do in terms of like kind of self-improvement, especially when it comes to screens, because I know you've done a lot of like media detoxes. And I do think that because of this situation, I will be taking some kind of action. And I think that some of the actions that you've mentioned, like, you know, deleting apps, I think that is definitely something that I'm going to take away from this. And hopefully other people listening to this do too. But yeah, no, I think that my laptop breaking has been sort of an epiphany, as in how much time I'm spending on screens. So I'm definitely going to take that on board. But, you know, it's kind of difficult at the same time because, you know, as we've said before, we do have such a reliance on screens as students. So I don't know, maybe I can suggest I can brainstorm with some of the people I know at King's, and maybe you can do the same at UEA and just put some ideas forward, because I do think that student mental health is something that has been neglected quite a bit. And, you know, my uni in particular, they have a really good system in place for students that need like the help with their mental health, and they have counselors available all the time, basically. So it's really good. I think I'm not going to say anything bad about their system because I think it is fantastic. But I think that in the situation, more needs to be done to prevent students from getting into that situation in the first place where they need counseling, you know? Yeah. It's like tackling the source rather than the you know, like the problem, I guess. Is that the phrase? I can't remember how it goes, but you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, it's like trying to prevent the thing from happening in the first place.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. So I think that more can be done, but as it's going to be a long time until something like that happens. And I think that at the moment, I think the best thing that we can do is just to prioritize our own screen time and maybe push that message to others.
Yeah, like feel free to share this episode with other people, and if it helps you, we would love to if you could share it with other people as well. And yeah,
I mean,
I think you got anything else to say?
I don't know. I feel like we need to come. I think we've come to like a firm conclusion of the kind of the viewpoints that we have on this topic, and I guess we've elaborated a bit on our own screen time as well. I know that you mentioned you spend quite a lot. I think I do too, because in the morning I do start like watching something on my phone while I'm having breakfast, and then I'll jump on my laptop, do work, do have a bit of a break when I eat lunch. That's like a bit of time I get away from the screen, and it's back on. And then into the evening as well, I'm either doing more work or calling friends, so it's more screen time. And then even in the evening, once I finish work, I do jump on Netflix or something just to help myself like settle before I go to sleep. So it is a lot,
It's partially due to the way the world is right now with lockdown and stuff like that. So I feel like there's that hope that solution will come where we can do things that we used to before, and where things will open again and stuff like that. So I feel like there is a big impact from the way things are now. But yeah, I think it's just like trying to just get through what's going on. And yeah, I think we've got a lot of things about how to prevent like screen time having such a like bad impact on you, and like how like do we spend so much time on technology. I think we covered a lot of great things. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody.
I'd say this is a good point to stop for us. I don't know what else to say really. I really like the point that you mentioned earlier about the sleep tracker as well. I think that's something I'm also going to do, because I feel like it's something that you don't really pay attention to. Is there like a certain amount of hours that you need a week? I know it's like recommend 8 hours.
I think it's like 8 hours a day, isn't it?
8 hours a day. Okay, so
that's what they recommend. Like depending on your age, there's a difference in how many hours they recommend. Also, I think it depends on each person individually, and like figuring out how many hours of sleep you do need to like function properly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's some people out there that brag that they only sleep like 6 hours a day. It's like, that's fine, you can do you. Don't force that on others.
Yeah, I feel there's studies that show which a lack of sleep and too much sleep can both have like effects on lifespan.
Oh really? That'll be interesting. If you have those studies on hand, we can put them in the show notes. I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure I can pull them from Notion if I save them and chuck them in the show notes.
Notion, of course, 20,000 pages. Good luck finding it.
That's right. I think the search is pretty decent on finding things, so I'm sure we can find that. I'll find that and put that all in there.
I don't doubt your organization at all, so I'm sure you'll be able to find it. But thanks everyone for listening. This has actually been quite enjoyable. I think this was a lot more informative, seeing as it's a debate, and I think that if this is something that people enjoy, then do let us know. I guess we can probably tell from the analytics how well this does too. So we can also use that. But thanks everyone for watching. And Alex, you have any final remarks?
Thanks a lot for listening, and just a quick plug, please like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. We really do enjoy making these episodes, and we really try to provide some value with them. So we really hope that you found it helpful, and you find these episodes helpful. Also, feel free to share it with your friends if you like. That would be awesome. We love the power of word of mouth, and it has one of the biggest impacts on the growth and the sharing of the podcast and all that kind of stuff. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. Hope you have an amazing day, an amazing weekend, amazing month, year, all that kind of stuff. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, I must agree. This is very enjoyable. And I think it's quite ironic that we're asking people to, like, share and subscribe to the podcast, when we mentioned earlier that you shouldn't really put too much on emphasis on that in content creation. But I think in our sense, it's more of making sure this can reach more people. But yeah, that's just a funny kind of final remark I'd put in. But everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.